Hello everyone. Today we are going to talk about list data type in Python. So list as a name itself implies is collection of items. These items can be of the same data type also, or they could be of different data types as well. So you can have a list where maybe some items are integer data type while others are string, some others are tuple. So that is why we say that list is mutable collection of heterogeneous items. Now, how do we define a list? So the items of the list are separated by comma and they are enclosed in this square bracket. So whenever we have to create list, the items have to be enclosed in this square bracket. So let's say we want to create a list of the marks a person or a student has got in 4 subjects. So English, Hindi, math, science, let's say. So out of 100, let's say in English, he has got 90, 80, maybe 66, maybe 100, right? So this right here is list. I can assign it to a variable. Let's call it marks. And let's now go ahead and print the list marks here. So this is how your list looks like. How do we know this is a list? Because this is enclosed in square brackets and the items are separated by comma. So this right here is your list. Now, if we go ahead and check the type of the variable marks, just to verify, you can see that marks holds a value of type list. The marks variable hold the value of type list. In this particular list, all the items are integer, but that doesn't have to be the case. The items of the list don't have to be the same data type. They can be any object. So let's say I create a mixed list. So maybe we have names first, followed by the marks. Aryan has got 100 marks. Then you have so here 20.5, right? So here, as you can see, you have string, you have integer, and you also have float data type. So this is again a list. If you go ahead and check the type of this variable, so as to confirm whether this is list or not, you can see that this is indeed list data type. Now, each of the items in this list, so this list right here has 4 items. Why? Because there are 4 values, 90, 80, 66, and 100. Now, how do I retrieve the items of this list? Let's say I want to fetch the value 66. How do I do that? So each list, each item in the list gets a index. It has its own index, and we can use that index to retrieve the associated values. So the first item in a list gets an index of 0, and then it gets incremented by 1. So the second item would have the index of 1, 2, and 3. Think of index as the address that you give to your items in the list. So the first item always starts with 0, not 1, but 0. The second item is at index 1, and so on and so forth. Now, let's say we want to access this 66. So we will say marks, square brackets, and 2, index 2. This will return the value of the marks variable at index 2. The marks list at index 2. What is the value of marks list at index 2? It is 66. What we need to remember here is that the first index is 0 and not 1 in Python. Now, let's say I want to access this variable 80. So what is the index of 80? Marks 1. And this will get me 80 here. the value at second position or at index 1. Now, similar to the positive indexing, Python also supports negative indexing. In the negative indexing, we start from the last item. The last item get an index of -1. Then the item after that or next to it gets an index of -2, and so on and so forth. So this would be -3 and this would be -4. So you see the index, the positive and the negative index of each item is unique. So when you say marks -3, it will fetch you the last item, which is 100. And when you say marks 3, sorry, if when you say marks -1, it will fetch you the last item, which is 100. And when you say marks 3, marks at index 3, it will fetch you again 100. So think of it in this way that each item in the list or each element in the list get two index or two address. One is positive, one is negative. So let's try with the mixed list here. I'll try to fetch the item, the last item or the last element of this mixed underscore list variable. I'll use negative indexing here. It is returning me 20.5, which is the last item here. And if I do this mixed underscore list and 0, 1, 2, 3, if I use positive indexing, it again returns 20.5. So we can either use positive or negative index to access or retrieve an item. Now, what if we want to change the value of the list? When I set the definition of the list in the beginning, I said that list is mutable collection of heterogeneous items. Now, where is that word mutable coming from? The word mutable simply means that we can change the value of the list. So, if I want to change this 100, let's say this is not 100, but maybe 80. So, how do I change this to 80 then in an existing list? So, I'll say mixed underscore list, and I want to change the value at position 0, 1, right? At position 1. So, I'll say 80. Now, this simply means that let's just run it first. And now let's print mixed list. So you see, this has changed to 80 now. Okay. So what were we saying here? So it was 100 previously, and now this has changed to 80. So now what are we saying here? We are saying that this mixed underscore list variable at index 1, I want to have the value 80. So I'm overwriting 100 with 80 here. So that is the reason we say list is mutable data type. We can go ahead and change the value in the list. You're selecting the item at position 1 and making it 80, or at index 1 and making it 80. Now, when I said that list is a collection of heterogeneous data type, can a list be embedded inside another list? Yes, it can be done. We can create a list of lists. List of lists. We call it nested list. Which is simply a list within another list. So let's try to create a nested list. So maybe I'll create a variable called data. And here I might have a list of marks of a particular student. So I'll first put the student name and then his or her marks, right? So this right here is a list which has these nested list within itself. We have a list, and there are these other lists inside of the list. So each item, first of all, how many items do this data variable has? I hope all of you can figure it out by looking at this list that there are three items. This is first item, this is second item, and this is third item. So there are three items in total in this list data. We can use length function to check the length or the number of items or elements in this list. This will give error because I've not executed this prior block. Now this is giving me 3. That means this list has 3 items. Again, which are these items? The first one is this list, then you have the second list and the third list. Now, if you access the item at index 0, what are we going to get? You're getting the first item from our list. What if I only want the marks of Aryan here? How do I fetch that? So data 0, as we have seen, returns what? What is the return value of this? It is returning a list, right? It is returning a list. From this list, or you can say this list, I want to retrieve 80. So how do you access the item of this list? So this value equates to this list here. And I want to access the item at position or index 1, right? For this list, you want to fetch the item at index 1. This here, data 0, corresponds to this list. So I can simply put square brackets and put 1. And what will I have? I'll have 80 here. So this is how you can slice and dice your list. You can access individual items in your list. But what if you want a subset of items from your list? So taking the example from earlier, the data from earlier, let's say marks. This was the list that we already have. Now what I want to do here is I want to slice and dice it, which simply means that we want to create a subset of this original list. So how do we do that? So when we want to slice and dice, right? We want to select some subset. Maybe I want to select from here till here, right? I have to specify the start index. So I'll say marks. I need to specify the start index from where I want to start slicing and dicing. Okay. Colon. Think of colon as 2 from start to whatever value that you assign. Then you have to specify the end index. Okay. So where you have to basically tell from beginning of the list up to the ending of the list, right? Where you want to start until what point you want to end. So you have specified the start index, then you have to specify the end index. But it would not be the end index, the index at which you want to end, but +1. Why +1? Because the end index is not included. I'll show it to you. So let's do this. Let's just comment this out. So let's say I want to fetch 90, 80, and 60. So marks, start index is 90, colon, the end, start index is 0, colon, the end index would be 0, 1, 2, right? That is what would make sense, right? Because we want 90, 80, and 60. But I asked you to do 2 plus 1. If you see here, I have in end index +1. Why did I say that? Because the way this works is the end index is not included. So if you just say, just erase this. If you just say mark 0, colon 2, let's see what happens. Because 2 is not included here, it will give you the value at index 0 and index 1. It is just returning 90, 80 while we wanted 90, 80 and 66. So we have to give 0 colon 3. So it would be start index colon end index plus 1 where you want it to end. But you have to give one more. Why? Because the end index is not included. The end index is not included. So when you give plus 1, it will include the end index. And then there is another argument or another option here, which is the step size. So right now we have been moving in the step of 1. We have been going from 90 to 80, from 80 to 66, from 66 to 100. We have been moving in the step of 1. What if we don't want to move in the step of 1? We want to jump. So maybe I don't want to go from 90 to 80, but I want to just pick up the odd numbers. So for first 90, then 66, and then if there's anything after that, but there's nothing here. Okay. So let's try that also with a different step size. So marks, let me just keep the step size 1 as of now. So I'll just take this from earlier and then I'll put colon 1. So this is obviously going to return me the same output. But what if I make this 2, the step size? What if I change the step size to 2? Now, when the step size is 2, let's look at the results. It's giving me 90 and 66. Why so? Because I've specified that from 90, I want to take a step of 2. That means I want to jump over the 80 here and directly go to 66. That is what this step size means. Can you tell what will happen if I do 0 colon 3 colon 3? What is this going to return me? It's returning you just 90. Why so? Because we have specified our range. By giving the start index and end index, what am I essentially saying? That I start at index 0, I end at index 2. Why 2? Because this is not inclusive, 3 is not inclusive. So I end at index 66. So this is my range. And then I'm moving in the step of 3. So from 90, where would I go? To 100. But is 100 in the range based on the end index and the start index? No. So it is just returning 90. Now you must be thinking, can I traverse backward? Can I go backward here? Been going forward, forward, forward. Can I go backwards as well? Can I have a negative step size so that I can move backwards? Yes, you can. Let's try it out. So I'll say 0 colon. And if I don't give any value, it simply means I want to go till the very end of this list. Let me show it to you. So I have no value here for the end index. That simply means go till the very end of the list. What if I omit this as well? That means go from the very start to the very end. What if I give 2 here? That means we want to start at index 2 and then go to the very end of the list. So 0, 1, 2, 66, 100, and that's it. Because that's the end of the list. Now, let's say I want to print the entire list, but let's in the reverse order. So I'm not giving any values, though you can say 0 and whatever value you want to put here. But I just want to go from the very beginning to the very end. So I can just leave it blank. And the step size is -1. That means I want to traverse this in backward direction. So I was at 100. I'll go to 66, from 66 to 80, and from 80 to 90. That is what traversing in backward means. So let's go ahead and execute it. So we are getting 100, 66, 80, and 90. So that is how you would slice your list with steps. By default, if you don't specify any step size, like earlier we were not giving this third value, then by default it will assume or take the step size to be 1. So we have seen what is a list, how to define a list, how to slice and dice a list, what does index mean for a list, and how we can edit or change the value, a particular value in a existing list. Now let's see how we can add items to a list. So I already have a list. Let's create another list with some probably fruit names. So let's create a list with fruits name. So I have this list where I have some fruits. Again, how do you define list? The items of the list are enclosed in square brackets separated by comma. Orange, and maybe banana. So this is my list. And let's say I want to insert a pineapple. Okay. So how do I do that? So there are basically inbuilt functions for the list data type. So there are functions which are specifically for list data type. You can call them functions or method, which are specifically to work with list. How do we access these functions? So fruits dot, and then if you press on tab on your Jupyter notebook, it will list down all the functions that are available for list data type. They are inbuilt functions. The code already exists for these. We are free to just go ahead and use them. To access this function, once again, I'll repeat, you give the object name or the variable name, dot, and then the function name. So to insert a value, I hope you must have guessed it by now, the function is insert. Then it will take some inputs. The function will take some inputs. So if you just press on Shift Tab on your keyboard simultaneously, you can see the inputs that this function takes. So it takes the index where you want to insert the object or the value, and then the object itself, the item itself that you want to insert. So I want to insert, let's say, pineapple at index 1. So let's try running it. Now, if you go ahead and check your fruits variable again, you, yes, indeed, pineapple has been inserted at index 1. So that is how we would insert item to a list. There are other ways to do this as well. One is insert. The second one is append. So let's try append also. It will autocomplete. You can simply press on the tab on your keyboard, tab key on your keyboard. And let's say I want to insert cherry. Okay. And now let's once again print the fruits variable, and you can see the cherry has been inserted or appended to my existing list at the end. Okay, so the append method will add an item at the end of a list. Now, how can we remove items from a list? Let's say I don't want pineapple in there, or maybe I don't want banana. How do I remove banana? So if I want to remove an item from my list, so maybe we don't have banana today, we are falling short of bananas. So I want to remove it from my list so that it doesn't display in my menu. Okay. So how do I do that? So I'll use the pop method, which is again an inbuilt function or method for list data type. And I'll say pop the item at index. What is the index of banana? 0, 1, 2, 3, or -1, -2, either of the two. 3 or positive index 3 or negative index -2. So it is returning you banana in the output. But if you go ahead and check your fruits, you can see that the banana has been popped out or deleted from my list. What if I don't give any value to this pop? I don't pass any arguments. Then what it will do, by default, it is going to go ahead, if you don't provide any value here, it is going to go ahead and remove the last item from your list. So now my fruits variable doesn't have cherry in it. Likewise, if there is another one to remove items from your list, which is remove. Now, remove, what it will do in the case of pop, we were passing the index of the item that we want to delete. In the case of remove, we will pass the value of the item that we want to delete. So, let's say if I want to delete pineapple, I'll simply pass the value of the item, pineapple. So, now if you check fruits variable, you can see that pineapple has been deleted. So likewise, there are other built-in methods for the fruits or the list data type. There is copy, which is used to create a copy of your existing list. So it's a separate copy that gets created. There is extend. If you want to uh, basically add an item to your list, again, you can use extend, but it is different from insert. Let me show you how. So let's do extend. And let's provide a value. So first thing to note here is that the extend function only takes an iterable, something that you can iterate over. So what is iterable data type? So list is an iterable data type, tuple is an iterable data type, string is an iterable data type. On the other hand, integer, float, complex numbers, these are not iterable data types. So let's say I want to add to my marks variable. So first, let's just go ahead and print marks. And then in this right here, I want to say marks and I want to extend, right? I want to add more marks to it. Maybe there was some more tests taken and I want to add the marks here. So if there were like first test 30 marks, then maybe 44, then maybe 32. Okay, so I have to provide a list here. Now, if I check the marks, this is what I have got. Each item in my table has been added as an individual or separate item in my original list, the marks list here. So 30 has been added, 44 has been added, and 32 has been added. So initially, the length of the marks variable here was 4. And now, after adding these 3 items, if I do len marks, you can see it is 7. Now, how is append different then? Let's just try the same thing, but with append. I'll just copy paste it. I'll just change this to append. Now, observe closely. I'll just change the value so that you can see what's going on here. And let's print the marks. You see, although this list has been added to my marks variable here, the marks list here, but it has been added as it is. In the extend, each item of my table was added as a separate item in my list. Here, the entire list has been added as it is. So the length of the list has only increased by 1 here because this one item has been added as it is. So now the length of my marks is 8. So that is the difference between extend and append. There are other built-in functions as well. Like you have clear, you have copy, count, pop we have discussed, remove, reverse is very self-explanatory. It would reverse the list, sort, again, if you want to sort it. So there are other functions as well, the inbuilt functions, which we'll discuss in the upcoming classes as and when they are required. Right now, the idea is that you should know conceptually that for list data types, there are some special functions, inbuilt functions that are available, which you can use to work with your list. So that is all for today's class, everyone. Thanks a lot for joining in.